Join the Shot Talk Patreon at patreon.com/shottalk. You'll receive early access to videos, have the ability to submit questions to future guests, and more. Thanks and enjoy.
Learn, it's almost like learning martial arts or something. Like, you learn the basics, right? You learn the wax on, wax off or whatever, but then you can play with, like, when you know it works, maybe we can try pushing it off an episode or play this character a little bit more vague or mystery. And like, but you need to kind of know the foundation before you start going crazy. And I think a lot of writers want to just skip those steps. And then they have a script that doesn't completely work and they don't know why.
Hey everybody, this is Rodrigo and welcome to another episode of Shot Talk. This week I have my friend Chad Quandt. Thanks for being on the show, dude.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited because you're the first, I guess, non-technical artist that we've had on here.
Yeah, everyone watching this is already clicking off. They're like, oh, writer. No, that's not art.
You're the brain. You're helping with put it all together.
I like to act. I like to think that at least. Yeah, for sure.
So I've known you for a few years now, and I knew you back when you were at Frederator.
Yeah,
correct?
And even before that, I think we talked a little bit back in the old Maker Game Station days.
That's right. But you've always sort of been in the realm of animation.
Yes.
So I feel like that's a very specific thing as a writer to be drawn to. Like, is that? I'm guessing you just grew up liking cartoons.
Yeah,
animation?
I mean, it's funny is I came out here specifically to writing cartoons, and every person I told that were like, kind of had this like, really? Like, you don't want to write for Big Bang Theory? Like, that's where all the money is, man. Like,
right.
No, I've definitely just grown up like loving, I could list off all the influences, but like everything from Reboot to Freakazoid to...
Dude, Freakazoid was incredible. Yeah.
Freakazoid is, I keep rewatching it. It's amazing how much cool stuff they were getting away with. There's like that weird era where Steven Spielberg was just producing like this really like snarky, witty cartoon series.
It sounded like he just kind of gave them permission to go crazy. But
totally.
So that makes sense. So that's really cool because it feels out here that in Los Angeles, the sort of the holy grail is to eventually end up doing live action or feature or whatever. But that's really cool. You kind of had a very focused, specific goal to begin with.
I mean, listen, if Marvel wants to offer me a Cloak and Dagger movie, totally down. I'll do it. But like always having more interest in animation for sure. I think there's just it just seems like there's so much more possibility to it.
Right.
Like every time I've ever written a script, people always ask, like, is this live action or cartoon? And sometimes like, yeah, you could do live action, but why wouldn't you do animation when there's so much more like freedom in the medium? Like,
so it kind of helps with just ideas where you don't feel as limited maybe, where it's like, we can conceptualize that pretty easily.
Yeah, like one of my favorite shows ever is Venture Brothers. It's astounding writing, amazing writing. And I feel like you could do a live action Venture Brothers and it'd be fine.
Right.
But because it's animated, you can get away with so much more stuff, and the medium itself is way more interesting to me.
Do you find like the humor in animation is, I don't know, like you can get away with being weirder or quirkier or just sort of, because it's going to come off differently?
I think you can get away with like darker stuff too. That's it's just kind of sneaking in things. I feel like I'll write something where like a character has a mental breakdown and falls down in the mud crying.
Right.
And it's funny if it's a cartoon, but if it was live action, it would be like something in Riverdale or something.
That's so true. Yeah. I think that's the South Park effect where I noticed that as that show kind of evolved, sometimes the humor would get a little unbearable because they get a little too rendered, a little too polished, and all of a sudden it gets too intense. But yeah, that's true actually. Like they can get away with some really fucked up dark shit because it's done in a very simplistic cardboard cutout style. So.
Yeah, and also I just kind of like any writing, even if it's a dramatic thing where you got to have like levity moments anyway, just to make you like feel the heavier moments, and you need animation almost to get that across sometimes.
That's fantastic that you bring that up because I always feel, I think we're coming out of it now, but it felt like a few years ago that a lot of films, you'd go into them and it'd be like one tone where it's like you're supposed to feel this feeling for a solid 2.5 hours, and you'd leave the theater just exhausted. Be it comedy, be it drama. So that's great that you're thinking about like the ups and downs, right? When you're thinking about story or script.
Yeah,
right?
I've been, and this is maybe not animation related exactly, but I've been thinking a lot about of like when a comedy has a darker moment, it hits you way harder, at least me, than say Game of Thrones or something where it's just kind of misery for a whole season. Like by comparison, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a live action show, they will do episodes where it'll suddenly go really serious, like Rosa's stuck in an active shooter situation and everyone's worried about her.
Totally.
I think that hits way more if for 5 minutes beforehand there was a great joke about Terry Crews loving yogurt or whatever. Like you need those kind of like rises and falls.
Completely.
Yeah.
It's funny. We have touched on this before, and I think it's a fascinating topic because as far as I can figure, I think for a lot of people, comedy is sort of that universal like fence lower where people's defenses go down because they're laughing. All of a sudden, you're more susceptible to those incredibly dark, serious moments, right? Because I've noticed that like even with Scrubs, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Scrubs is a great example of that. Yeah,
just
for
like
sure.
a ton of bricks as soon as it gets really serious. So
the ones I always think about a lot, and this is gonna make me feel really old, is I grew up watching a lot of old like classic like Cheers and like All in the Family and like all these things where they're written more like stage plays.
Yeah.
But it's so silly, and I mean, All in the Family also, by the way, is just dealing with a ton of like racial commentary. But it'll go from like Archie Bunker going like, Edith, you're sitting in my chair, to like immediately dealing with like the death of a loved one. And it hits so much harder because you kind of have like joy and sadness in the same episode.
Completely, yeah. I mean, I know all this Will Smith. I think that sort of elevated him to being a feature actor, right?
Yeah,
because
man.
they had those few episodes that would just rip your heart out.
Oh, there's like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like when his dad comes back.
Yes.
Yeah, it hits so much better that way.
Yeah. So I guess you try to incorporate, as a team for the show you're on. Is that something that you guys think about? Like something that you try to work in? Or?
Yeah, I think like for like when I was on Trollhunters has a lot more of that. When the show I worked besides UniKitty is a lot more just silly,
right? Lighthearted fun, but
you still try to get character moments in it. For something like Trollhunters, where it could become so quickly like this really just dark, dire, edgy thing. You gotta still remember, like, one, it's theoretically a show for kids. Like, it is still.
So you're working the other way. You're trying to keep it like not sticking dramatic into fun. You're trying to make sure that you're staying fun. Basically.
Yeah, I think at least the kind of moments of like, hey, this is pretty heavy. A character just died.
Right.
And I think kids can handle it, but that's a whole other conversation on like, I think kids can totally handle like heavy stuff.
Totally.
But at least giving them moments to breathe, or like, you have a big loss, but then there's a victory they come back to, or there's a moment just to make you remember that there's some brightness in this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, no, that's again another topic that I'm very much an advocate for. The idea that I think kids we don't give them enough credit in terms of what they can handle, and I think I don't know about you, but I feel like a lot of shows sometimes get a little patronizing, a little bit too easy. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those films growing up, I mean, I speak for myself, were in a lot of those Disney films that just really rattled me. I don't know. I don't think it took away from, I think in fact, it just makes you more emotionally acute and aware of how things can be. Like when Bambi's mom dies, or when Snow White, the transformation scene. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's something people shouldn't shy away from as much, I guess.
I think kids can totally handle it, and if they can, it's because you haven't shown them anything like that yet.
Right.
My first couple years out here, I've talked to executives who would just really, even just against like that, but like, serialized storytelling. Like, really just didn't think kids could handle that.
Just remembering the through line.
The through line for it. And at least for me, I growing up, I remember getting up at 6 a.m. Every Saturday to watch Beast Wars. Yeah. And like being able to follow the track of like a character arc, and then caring when Dinobot like sacrificed himself to save the prehistoric cavemen. Like, I cared, I could follow it, and I don't know, like it meant so much more that invested you, it rewarded you for watching.
I remember as a kid, that's why I thought animes were interesting, because there would always be a cliffhanger, or there was always something to look forward to. But that's interesting that some people think that kids can't connect the dots that way. That's crazy.
I think there's definitely some people who are scared of that, and they're like, I mean, Gumball or like Teen Titans Go, or these shows that are doing like
resets.
You can just watch them. They're like popcorn. You can just
Yeah.
pick them up. They're totally fun. Maybe there's an ongoing runner of like Beast Boy has a crush on Raven. That's it.
Right.
But it's so fun to reward you for sticking by and like tuning into the same shows. I mean, it's kind of what we tried to do with Trollhunters a little bit was every episode, theoretically, you could watch and still enjoy it. Kids fighting monsters, but there's so much like A-story stuff going through all of it that you want to watch the next episode, and you're seeing character growth go off of it.
How do you? I mean, that's an interesting thing to keep in mind when you're approaching a single episode. Like, so I'm guessing that you have. I guess you kind of write sort of a plot within itself, right? And then you're trying to sprinkle in overall story arc ideas.
Yeah, I think we always kind of like I could speak to Trollhunters a little bit, and we had a super talented team of everyone waited and had different ideas for it. So make sure never just sounded like I'm just taking credit for all of it.
Sure. That's usually how it works, anyways. It's a big.
I know
It's the writing room, right?
Man, the writing room is a great tool. I think we kind of always try to look at it like each individual episode, like what's the game or what's like the hook of it.
Yeah.
It'd be Claire is possessed by an ancient witch, and now they got to go on a date. Like that's the individual episode fun. If you happen to watch it, that's the Netflix log line that tells you what's going to happen.
Right.
But it's set up because of things in the previous episode, and it's going to do things that you can play with the next one. So theoretically, you can still enjoy that episode by itself, but it's so much more rewarding to watch in order.
That seems tricky to me to write because
it's much harder to write. That's for sure.
Yeah, because I'm sure as you're going along, you have to make sure you're not compromising stuff that's been set up before and everything, right?
It kind of requires to constantly be readjusting everything and then being okay readjusting it. Like knowing that, hey, this thing in episode 10 is going to change, but that means we need to readjust the first 5 episodes before that.
Yeah.
This, even if it's minor stuff, like just knowing the cause and effect that you got to do.
That's
a lot more rewriting for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting going back to the idea of popcorn episodes versus story arc. Overall, I think too that so again, ironically, if an executive's worried about stuff not selling and sticking, I think that's how you build that's almost like a long-term investment versus sort of like quick and easy money, right? Because if you can get somebody to get invested for the long haul, once season 2 comes out, that's when the huge rewards start coming in. Because that's happened with features like with Dragons. I remember Dreamers sort of saw that movie as a bit of a flop, but then because things were set up so sincerely and correctly with the characters, the fandom is absolutely crazy now. So it's like one of their biggest money makers now.
Oh, so. Yeah. I mean, the best example of any of this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff. It's this giant media empire that you could theoretically just watch Ant-Man, but like it so wants you to go, hey, if you want to get on board, awesome, but you should probably watch these 10 movies ahead of time and reward you for it. I mean, it really just creates more business and watchers for it. I think it's changed a little bit too when I was talking about executives I've heard being scared about it, that was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I think with streaming, like Trollhunters is a Netflix show, so we rewrote it to be bingeable. I know that word feels kind of gross, but we definitely want you to be like, just keep going. Just keep the episodes going because you want to see what happens next.
Yeah.
As opposed to the old model of every Saturday is a new episode, so kids have to remember between week to week. I got that mindset more in the past of
I feel
cable releases.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say I feel like this stuff does feel like it's trending that way and I wonder if milestones like Breaking Bad is sort of what changed the way people want to develop shows now. Because I've actually gone into like pitch meetings where I set up a show to be sort of that gumball sort of silliness.
Yeah.
And then, but they'll come around saying like, so what, is there an overall story arc? And of course, they catch me with my pants down. I go, well, there could be, but I definitely didn't think about that.
That's interesting to even hear about. Yeah, I think shows like Steven Universe too, and they're at least paying off that there are fans who love that sort of payoff and growth over time.
Right.
I mean, my favorite stuff is probably the least commercially available. Like, my favorite shows are all, like, and stories to tell are the character that you see in season 1 you won't even recognize in season 3. Like,
oh wow, okay.
It's that stuff that like Archer kind of does.
Oh, okay.
But like even better was, do you ever see Frisky Dingo? It was the show.
I heard about it.
It's it's phenomenal comedy storytelling.
Adam Reed?
Adam Reed,
Yeah.
between Sea Lab 2021 and Archer was his least successful show, my favorite one, but it's his superhero show, and like every episode they will just kill off major characters. Dead. They're gone forever. Because they believe in themselves to like introduce 5 new characters that you're going to love even more.
That's going to work.
And it's that kind of like boldness to just write yourselves in corners and like throw away the safety net that leads to really cool storytelling.
That's really neat. I've heard of, I think about guys like Louis C.K., the same kind of idea where he says he sometimes purposefully starts a set and tries to get the entire audience against him by saying something really off color or just really offensive. Because he wants to be put in the corner. He wants to be put in like, now I got a place to go. Now I have to work myself out of this.
I remember hearing Patton kind of joke, like Patton Oswalt, about between every set, he should just like, I think this is a Comedians of Comedy tour. He says like, you'll do a great set, and you're like, man, boy, that cancer can't be stopped though. Anyway, like you just have to just reset and build through it.
Totally.
I think it's the storytelling equivalent of, you have like when you're pitching your show, right? You have your first season. It's about a boy that wants to be a sailor or whatever.
Sure.
God,
how'd you know?
How'd you know? This is a really bad example of me trying to be a writer by pitching the worst show ever.
So
weird. But like by the second season, the boat has crashed and now they're on an island. But like what, like kind of like moving past whatever was the original premise.
Yeah.
And letting the characters grow and bringing the audience on board. If you love the characters that much, now you want to see, screw the boat. Like, I don't care.
Right.
Now let's see what happens when he finds an island and becomes their god or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part too, is that I think people who are greenlighting want to have, like you said, that safety net, and like they might fall in love with the boat or something.
I totally get it too, yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense. You want something that's serialized and can go on for 30 years and always make a ton of money. So yeah, I like that idea though. I think that's sort of, and I speak for myself, where that was sort of the fun of the Newgrounds days, where it's like you can just, there's no expectations. You can do whatever you want with the characters. Like, in fact, maybe it's even too much in that direction, where it's just like, who cares? Nothing is sacred. But then I think, like you said, the cool thing about that is that creatively it forces you to, stretch yourself a little bit, which is fun, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the whole, what you want out of a creative job anyways, right? Like that's the ideal.
I've been trying to find kind of like the middle ground where everyone's still happy of, like, let's use Trollhunters as an example. It starts in such a different spot in the first season as where it is at the end of the series. Like, characters are completely different. They have new powers and abilities. But like, we tried to stay to, hey, the whole series is still about magic and monsters hidden in the everyday world. Like, trolls living under bridges and gnomes that you don't see because they're too small and fast. And like, it's still about teenagers trying to fight, examples of trying to fight like monsters or metaphors for like character growth kind of thing. Yeah. Like, so there's still, even if like season 3 of Trollhunters is so different and so many things have happened, and characters are gone and dead, but it still feels like the show that you loved in the first season. That's the goal, at least.
That's great, yeah. Do you guys feel like you've more or less stayed in that realm?
I mean, there'll be some angry internet commenters like, you totally ruined Blinky or whatever.
Compromise the character.
Yeah, but I think, at least to us, it always felt like good character growth going in interesting ways.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk too much about a show if people haven't seen it, but like, Claire, our main female character, was the most interesting one to me, of like kind of just being this like love interest in the first season. And yeah, she's kind of quirky a little bit, but like really breaking into her going to be like a magic user, and she's possessed by an ancient witch, and now she can like summon shadow portals like Nightcrawler. And like, what does that mean for a kid that was a straight A student that was pretty much just someone our main character, fawned over for the first couple episodes, and exploring that character? Or like, my favorite one, honestly, is we had this character Steve, played by Steve Yeun from The Walking Dead, who's
great.
He's so great. He completely killed the character.
Yeah.
And the very first couple episodes, he's very much like a Biff Tannen bully, like just beats him up. And we had so much fun kind of like breaking him down and making him sympathetic, and you see why he's the way he is, and then letting him like in on the secret of monsters and showing his response to it, where like, yeah, we kind of like this guy. Like, hopefully you like. I think for a lot of people, it became like their favorite character because
Totally.
he has more complexity to him, and
It's like Jamie Lannister. I noticed that.
Yeah, totally.
Certain shows start off, completely making you hate somebody, and then enough seasons go by, and all of a sudden you're kind of rooting for him, which is really weird to suddenly, emotionally be in that space.
You gotta
right?
Like for Jamie Lannister, you gotta forget that he pushed a child out a window.
He had sex with his sister
on top of his dead child's body.
Exactly. And
but you still kind of root for him a little bit.
I don't know if you've seen Silicon Valley. But,
only the first couple seasons.
There's some characters in that like, season 1 you're rooting for them or hating them, and then it kind of flips by the time you get to the 5th season. So yeah, it's always really interesting that can happen.
I've always at least tried to do that, even if you don't like a character. I think the best like villains, you see their point of view. Like a great example, I think, would be like in Black Panther, Killmonger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a villain. He's going to do. You see his point. He's going to like.
Right.
He's going to accomplish his goal by bad means, i.e., like creating war across the globe. Right. But you see his argument at least.
Right, and it's sort of rationalized.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it makes it more bittersweet when he gets defeated, because you're like, well, he did think about it. I guess he had kind of a heart about it, I guess.
Yeah. It's way more interesting to me than just kind of hand-wringy villains that are like, I'm evil because it's fun or whatever. And
I think about there's a line burned in my memory watching the Ninja Turtles growing up, where the Shredder, he has a moment where he tells the troops to go, like, get the turtles, like talking through his phone, and then he has a moment to himself before the scene ends. He goes, "It feels so good to be so bad," and then like end scene. And I thought, like, even as a kid, I was like, that's a little much.
Is that all you got?
There's got to be some writers who are just having a fun day or something.
I also get when those characters. I get very younger cartoons. Like, you have a big old evil demon character they got to fight, but it's always so much fun just at least to see the perspective.
Right. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned Steven Yeun. Do you guys ever get the chance? I don't know, like, what kind of strings Guillermo can pull at this point, but do you ever have a character where you're writing specifically for an actor that you want to eventually voice the character?
A little bit, yeah. We always are really careful about ever expressing that too much. You don't want to say. I'm trying to think of a not actual example, so I don't say an actual actor's name, but like let's say in our mind it's Jamie Lannister's actor or whatever.
Right.
Like, we might be thinking that character in our mind, that actor, and writing towards that, and internally we're like, that's totally
pie in the sky
and ideal. But then when we actually go out to casting and we have everyone reach out, including Guillermo, who people are so excited to work with, this amazingly talented creator.
Yeah, he's got to have some.
Yeah, we don't want to say out loud, we're looking for that character, because that could be like completely insulting to the other actors who are like, they read that. If they read, I can't think of Jamie Lannister's actor's name. Everyone on the internet's typing it in right now. But like, if they see his name, they're like, oh, well, I'm second fiddle, I guess.
Okay.
But all the time.
So you're talking about specifically about when you're putting a call out.
When you're putting a call out, I think there's a conversation between internally who you see. I actually love using character reference points for writing. It can feel kind of cheap sometimes to literally just say, like, this character is Peter Parker meets so-and-so. Right. But it really helps you, especially to other people, like the voice you're seeing. Like, even if it's not exactly Peter, we're not just writing Peter Parker. He's not going to talk about Brooklyn pizza or whatever. But the relationships you want, the type of tone they have, and using that as kind of guide points to get your character started.
That must be important too in a collaborative environment, because that's you need to have everybody writing with the same headspace, right?
Yeah, and it's really kind of fascinating if you're not careful about that. It almost kind of becomes a game of telephone where they took one tiny little thing you said and they go a totally different way with it, and then you don't realize until a week or two later that like, oh, I was picturing like a dark emperor, and you're thinking regal king or whatever.
Right.
Just because you said, tough king.
Right.
These are really bad examples. I'm so sorry.
No. I get what you're saying, though. I think a lot of, even in animation, a lot of guys who, like I include myself, when you're doing stuff for yourself, it's really just chicken shit. You're drawing out these really rudimentary stick figures because you know what's going to turn into. But yeah, once you're in a team environment, you got to be so clear, so crystal clear with all your storyboards and all the ideas you're trying to hand off to the next department or whatever. So, but yeah, I can't even imagine like with writing. I guess that's the importance of that room, right?
Yeah,
Making sure.
internal reference points for sure. Or I can't believe how many times I've pitched ideas saying it's like that movie. Like,
Right.
especially for Trollhunters, like how many times we reference Indiana Jones or Back to
Right.
the Future or any Amblin movie. And as you pitch it, it almost starts to sound like, I just want to steal that idea. But it's really not. It's you just going, this tone I want, or like, remember that dynamic between those two characters?
Yeah.
We should totally apply that to this scene here.
Yeah.
And because it's a scene everyone's actually seen, it can open up so much more conversation and make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah. You guys should have movie days. I don't
We
know.
actually do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially for the show I've been working on, Wizards now. We've been watching a ton of like Arthurian Camelot shows. We've been watching Lord of the Rings.
That's great.
It helps a lot getting people inspired, even like with the board artists of like, we've been watching Indiana Jones stuff, which has always been an influence on the Trollhunters, just the tone and
Yeah, adventure and fun.
adventure, but just even like, hey, you know what we love about this? We love the choreography of every Indiana Jones fight sequence where it's about someone getting the upper hand and then losing it and then going back and forth. And that's what we're totally thinking for this scene. It helps so much to be
That's a
inspired
really
by it, yeah.
smart idea. Like in the small stint that I had in a writing room, I always wish that we had sort of those days where we could be like,
Yeah.
hey, everybody, let's all kind of point the same direction, so to speak. So yeah, that's great that you guys do that.
Yeah, one of our very first months on the crew, we actually made everyone. We didn't make. It was they were allowed to not go to Red Fair, like medieval times out here.
yes. Yeah.
The pleasure fair. Just get into it. Like see
Totally.
these crazy people walking around dressed like crows, just to think about what
Right, the
this type of world
possibilities.
of magic would be.
Did you guys cosplay as troll hunter characters?
I did not. I wish.
That might be a bit much, I guess.
Yeah,
but-
I tried to dress more for the heat,
Okay.
but yeah, a little bit for sure.
Well, there's some trolls that are pretty lightly dressed, I would imagine. Right?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, it's mostly loincloth and just hair. So
There
I
we
guess I
go.
could have pulled off a solid like ARG.
There we go.
I think I'd kicked out of the fair.
Worth it for the story.
Very much so. Yeah.
Now, I speak for myself when sometimes writing rooms can be, it's not always a perfect picture. A lot of times
Yeah.
there's like just conflicting ideas. Do you guys have ways to sort of get over that, or find a happy middle ground, or?
Yeah, that's honestly been the biggest skill to learn in a writer's room is how to hear someone's idea, tell someone if you're not particularly feeling it, because we're all writers, we're all super sensitive.
Right, you all have the best ideas.
Yeah, every idea.
single
Yeah,
one of you, right?
and it's usually really not an ego thing. Like I want my idea. It's every person going, I see a solution to this. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, right.
Especially if like someone's been talking for a few minutes about their idea, it's percolating in their head. They got all these cool ideas for it, and it can be really hurtful to throw it out in the room and then have it
Right.
immediately shot down or give a reason why it's told not to. I try a lot to work around not giving excuses for why an idea doesn't work. Like,
Oh, okay.
you kind of see there's some writers that'll like kind of come up with, it's almost like debate class.
Yeah.
In a positive way, where like you pitch me an idea, I don't really want to do it, but as opposed to just saying either I don't really like that or it bumps me the wrong way, I might come back with like a logic reason. Well, that character totally can't go there because they don't have a horse.
Right.
And
right.
then that invites you to go like, well, why don't we give them a horse?
Right, exactly.
And then you realize you're kind of debating what's not even what the note was, the idea.
you start to get the technicalities.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's a lot more helpful to have like, hey, you're pitching an idea. I bump on it because of this either character motivation or that joke rubs me the wrong way, or you don't mean to do this, but that sounds super sexual. Right. Like that ever happens. Every once in a while, will pitch a line, you're like, you don't realize that sounds like they're going to eat farts or what, like, or whatever. Right. Oh, I didn't mean that at all. But it's like, yeah, it kind of sounds like a butt sex joke. We shouldn't do that.
Right.
But like, actually coming back with what you genuinely feel about it, but in a nice way. Like there's a very writer shorthand of like, you kind of sandwich the note with a compliment.
Uh-huh.
It's like, that's a really cool idea, but blank.
Yep.
That doesn't work for this reason, but, and then another nice compliment. That's the really like,
Right.
the diplomatic way to do it.
Right.
This is all leading into what I've really kind of learned, I think helped a lot, is if two different people have different ideas on it, don't make it about like A versus B. Mm-hmm. Find a C option that takes what both of us are feeling. Like really get to the note of like, what are you pitching in like what itch are you trying to scratch?
Right. So you're talking more of I really want this emotion. I want this feeling. I want the character experience this. And maybe it's not A or B, but like, something that satisfies that.
Yeah, because the initial pitch might be, and I'm trying to just speak hypothetical without spoiling story stuff. It might be like, you want a character to have a sword.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have a character to have a sword because I think we have too many characters with swords.
Right.
And realizing as we talk about it in a really helpful way is like, it's not that you just think swords are cool. They are cool. It's that you want that character to feel empowered or something.
Exactly.
Or you want them to have a unique thing to contribute. And so then us figuring that out, I was like, well, hey, how about this? Why don't we give them a hammer? Like, give them something unique, and that answers my problem with too many characters with swords. You get what you want, and now there's this new option that we're both pretty happy with.
That's great, yeah.
That's like the best ideal situation of kind of like yes-anding.
Yes.
But going into a room, not making one person feel like their idea wasn't heard.
Right, or they got squashed or something.
Yeah, but something that kind of gets the most people's urges as possible.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and that's very conscientious. I think a lot of times, people don't think that far about because you mentioned the compliment sandwich. Like I think about animation supervisors that the good ones are they tend to use that technique, but then the ones that are a little less refined in their approach, they'll just be like, wrong, fix, and it's like, man, it's hard to feel inspired after a conversation like that. And like you said, creatives are very sensitive.
And I get it too, especially whenever you're on a time crunch, you really just want to. I've been guilty of it too. You just want to cut to the chase and like, hey, we have one day to figure this out. But it's so helpful to have as much as possible. Everyone, especially in the writer's room, feel like their ideas are being heard and like they're all contributing in a certain way because they do. Everyone in that room, even if it's not their script, totally contributes to the story.
You guys should get like foam bats and just like let it all out.
Oh my God, I wish.
That'd be so good.
It's usually, honestly, the one we've gone to the most for late night event is either whiskey at the end of the day.
There you go.
Or I'm a big fan of playing Ultimate Werewolf.
Okay.
It's
is it that card game where one person's a werewolf?
Yeah, it's there's a really simpler version called One Night where you can play it in 5 minutes. You just kind of clear the table, everyone stands up.
Yes.
And just for a few minutes, you just kind of like play a social mind game of pretending some people are werewolves and you all kind of get to yell at each other. And it seems like it should make people more angry, but it really lets out a lot of like energy.
Yeah. Dude, that's a fantastic game. And it's great because then you sort of, it's like a social, who can wit each other, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really fun game. I wanted to ask you, because I know I'm always curious about like how much involvement the writers are in terms of communication with the board artists.
Yeah, totally.
And I know that some situations are every production is different. So I'm just curious about your experience with interfacing with the artists.
That's a great question. I think about that a lot. We're in different shows, some of them where it's when the script is done, it's just, that's the end of the conversation. It just kind of goes to magical storyboard land.
Right.
And you'll see it when it's an animatic. Right. And I've worked on the other side of that too, which I like a lot more, of the directors and the board artists just working hand in hand with the writers. And you still respect when the script is done, it goes to directors and board artists who have their own vision, they have their own ideas, but really just kind of keeping that conversation going. Like having that thing be where when they're in boards in your script, clearly we wrote this script, we care about it, every line means something to us. But if they're like, hey, this third sequence is just, we're bumping because of this. As opposed to, I think the bad version would just be, it's out of our hands and we're just shocked when they cut that sequence in animatic.
Yeah.
But as opposed to, so much better to be like, hey, let's just sit down and talk. Like, what's not working for you? Like, that's totally a valid point. We could move that sequence. We could totally rewrite it, and give you the thing. But that hand-in-hand communication is so crucial, and it's great when shows allow you to do that.
I think it's kind of what it boils down to, right? Is just open communication, because then otherwise, you think someone might be being spiteful or someone's stepping on other people's toes, but it's usually because I've like I said, I've dipped my toe a little bit in both of those waters, and oftentimes you'll get a script and you realize that just through visuals you can get maybe sometimes a stronger impact with versus something that might be too much dialogue. You know what I mean? So it's trying, because that's ultimately what you're trying to do is use the best tools out of the arsenal of filmmaking tools, right? And sort of making the best version of that. But it gets really tricky when Yeah, because you don't want to like I said.
We don't want to step on each other's toes, but at the same, and I also have always tried to at least be mindful of the power of really talented board artists and directors who are much better at that than I am, like visual storytelling. But at least like, this sounds patronizing, like throwing them a bone, but the equivalent of like in scripts, knowing that there's something really heavy going on and we have some jokes, but we could write almost a more simplistic version of, while these two characters are talking, Arg messes around in the kitchen, or that's like the bad version of it, but not detailing every single step of what's going on, so that the board artists have the freedom to add their own twist to it. They get to experiment with stuff, and they come up with really cool creative things that we would never would have thought of, because we're trying to almost write general enough for them.
It's tricky trying to keep it loose that way. I know like live action directors, you hear them talk when they have a moment of inspiration while they're shooting, because they realize that, you know, something just pops out to them. And that sort of visual exploration is sometimes, I think, the best board artists can do that, where they'll draw out a composition and be like, oh my God, what if we use this element to then carry out this message across the sequence? But yeah, that's nice that there are situations where you are actually going back and forth with board artists.
Oh yeah, we've been having some great stuff on our current show, Wizards, where like we have some of the board artists are overseas in Canada, and some of them are on staff, but like the ones that are there they can email us whenever, or they just come over and like, I have this really exciting idea how these two characters interact. What do you think? And then we get to play off of it and come up with a really fun version. It feels so much more collaborative, and it also keeps track of like, hey, we had that line in episode 2 because it means something in episode 4.
Right.
Please keep it, or find a version of that works.
On the other end too, I feel that because I feel every now and then there's an example of a film or a TV show where it's like they could have actually used a lot more script. You know what I mean? Where like I think about like a lot of maybe even French stuff where it's like visually the best in the world, but gosh, I really wish something was a little more clear or a little more structured, I guess. So, yeah. I guess it's finding that perfect balance between those two worlds, I think.
I've always tried to be really respectful to it too, because I know that there are board artists who have a little bit of chip on their shoulder about like these writers coming in and like telling them what to do. Either bad experiences they had, or they worked on a show that was. I've been lucky enough, I guess, in a way to always work on script-driven, and I've never worked on just an outline-based show. Which sounds so much easier. You just write like a couple pages. Not to knock anyone who just does outlines. It just seems. Man, write 4 pages as opposed to 30. That sounds great. But I think like, so that doesn't come like down like, hey, we are dictating exactly what you need to do. Go and do it, board artists. Like, actually make it feel like your input is important, and we can't tell the story without you. And it is equal level of respect between script and storyboard, for sure.
It'd be an interesting thing to do. This is totally just a thought experiment, but I feel that what if it was scripted out, then shot live action, with just like DSLR or something, and then that way in the editing bay you realize what you actually need and don't need.
Oh my God!
Now that's extra money to do that, but
I mean I've heard of people filming short little things. For reference,
for
never like a whole episode or that sort of thing. I feel like there's been things like on Trollhunters, my writing partner and I, we wrote a Creep Slayer's rap. And we just recorded it on our phone so that
Were you actually rapping in the phone?
A little bit. It's more spoken word. All right. And that'll never see the light of day. That's
so modest. You're so modest.
But at least in terms like, so the board artists know, and then we actually can give that to our actors like Steve Yeun, and who hear it and go, this is what we were thinking, like, enjoy it. But man, having a whole episode, this kind of like live action board, would be so interesting.
Yeah. You mentioned a writing partner. Do you have, is that something official, or is this just someone that you confide in?
Oh yeah. Shout out to my writing partner, Aaron Walke. I have a writing partner that I've worked with on pretty much most of my projects for last 6 or 7 years. And we've done other individual stuff, but in terms of our main hire, we are a writers team. We usually, in terms of how logistics of getting hired, we are one seat in the writer's room.
Oh, that's great. I think too, that's probably a safeguard too, because sometimes you need someone, because again, like in the writing room I've been in, when it's a bunch of strangers coming in, nobody understands what the other person might be going for. So having someone who knows your sensibilities, that's got to be a huge
It definitely helps a lot.
Benefit.
Honestly, that's been a bigger thing of like, if your writing partner, especially the longer you've been working, you might know shorthand with them, but the rest of the room doesn't know your shorthand.
Right.
So you almost have to like not do the shortcuts and almost step back and go back to the way you used to talk about ideas.
Sure.
Excuse me. I think it's an interesting thing to have for sure. I mean, if anyone's writing and they don't have a writing partner, like I don't know how you get anything done as long as you don't have at least an accountability buddy or someone just making sure you're turning stuff in or keeping you honest on. I don't know how every individual writer does it.
Do you, outside of the job, do you sort of try writing other things, just keep yourself sharp, or like for practice?
Yeah, a little bit. I help a few friends with projects. Like I've been helping for years. Friend of ours, Ross O'Donovan, on his Gameaverse project.
Right.
And so it's like I'm collaborating with him on that kind of thing. Like I think it's good. I definitely like to have, especially any cool project like that you want to be involved in. But I think just getting to flex those different muscles. Like Trollhunters is a very specific type of show with humor mixed with action. And then like Gameaverse, for example, is a very different tone. Coming soon someday, hopefully. But like that, getting to just write that just keeps different muscles in your brain feeling good. And that kind of fulfills other creative sensibilities that you want. So when you come back to Trollhunters the next day, you're just feeling more creatively fulfilled.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree. I think like that's what's fun about being out here is that everybody's got a project going on, and having those late night conversations with people and sort of hashing things out and figuring things out is like, it makes sometimes the regular job be like, well, it's okay if I compromise and go with an idea that I don't like, because at least I'm sort of still like I guess pollinating other things, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's like going off that, the bigger skill is almost being able to say no sometimes. I have such a problem of like everything is always a shiny new toy that I totally want to be on board of, and then someone's like, "Hey, dude, I want to write like 10 young adult book novels about a badger that solves mysteries." I'm like, that sounds great. I love badgers. I'll totally do that too. I don't know when I'll sleep. I'll write it. That's fine. Like, and being able to know, like, you know what? I can't do the badger thing right now. I got enough stuff on my plate. This TV show that I'm showrunning is way more important.
Right.
The badger will be there when I get done, like that kind of thing.
I get that impression from a guy like Guillermo, because it seems like his name pops up in a lot of different projects.
I don't know how he gets all those things done.
Yeah, I can't help but feel like he's maybe a kindred spirit that way, where he's always just, But
I think he always has really cool, passionate ideas. Like I say, like, we've heard tangential stuff about other movies he's working on, and I still have yet to get to actually talk to him about his Hobbit movie. That's my like holy grail. Is I want to
the one that never happened, right?
The one that Jackson took over for. Yeah, like I want to see his movie so bad.
I had a friend who was a former Weta animator who came over to Glendale, and he had on file some Guillermo del Toro creature designs for Smog, vastly different than what they look like now.
I bet it was super awesome. Yeah,
really cool, because I mean what they went with was good. It was very traditional and kind of what he expected Smog to be. But yeah, like his ideas were pretty left field. So it would have been a really interesting movie to see what he would have done with that.
He's been like, it sounds like I'm just blowing smoke up his ass. He's been an amazing guy to work with, because I've been a fan of his for ever.
Yeah, that's got to be a treat.
Like Pacific Rim is one of my favorite movies ever.
That's got to be a geek out moment, right?
Geek out. Every time we're in the room with him, I try. God, I hope he doesn't see this. Every time
he was probably one of them.
I try to act so cool and like it's not a big deal. But when you're pitching stuff to Guillermo, it's very like, this is the guy that's like responsible for a lot of my favorite things.
Labyrinth, yeah.
And so when he does like something that you've pitched, it's just the best little like euphoric moment of like, fuck yes, it's all coming true.
Is there a I don't know, a lot of people have like their go-to phrase or their go-to, like they give you a handshake or something.
Yeah.
Does he have does he grunt a certain way?
He doesn't grunt a certain, God, I wish he grunted. He's really, in a best way, he's very blunt and direct. Like he just tells you what he likes and what he doesn't. Yeah. He's really nice about it, and he constantly has cool new ideas.
Cool.
And even if it means me having to rewrite a bunch of stuff,
right,
it's never been a bad idea. That's kind of like the craziest part about it is I've heard about stuff on shows where a writer's like, yeah, our executive came in and God, he had this terrible idea because his kid gave him this, like, his 7-year-old pitched him an idea, now we got to do it, and now we're rewriting the season.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh, it's so bad. But like every time Guillermo's come in, he's either been inspired by something that we've already done, or he watches a new animatic and like, and something really resonates with him.
So it's coming from a place of, it sounds like real inspiration.
Real inspiration and passion, and like something that clicks for him, and he wants to spread that into the show. And to his credit, he's really great about like pitching an idea, and then if any level of like, hey, I just need to raise a tiny little red flag of like, that idea might blow up something we're doing later in the season, he hears you out and totally works with you on it. It's been like, it could be such a nightmare, and it's been so great working with him.
It also sounds like he's kind of he's a pretty busy guy. So is there a lot of like teleconferencing, or is he available?
We try to get him in as much as we can, but it's usually like him flying between, I think he's like shooting scary stories to tell in the dark as a movie right now. So it's kind of like, we'll try to kind of bulk load up the stuff that we've worked on.
I gotcha.
Like, hey, here's the last 3 episodes. You've already heard the outlines. Now here's the scripts of it. You've already been sent them to you, but we'll read them with you. Like, what are your thoughts?
Right.
So we kind of created in like, it's like little mini holidays when Guillermo gets to come in and we catch him up on stuff. He's heard new ideas. But making sure he's part of the process. It would be amazing if he could be there every day.
Sure.
But the nature of his, I have him having like 10 movies he's working on.
I remember he made he was temporarily at DreamWorks, the campus in Glendale for a while. And I remember that he came in and he would just consult with I remember Panda 2 specifically. That was a show that I was working on, and we had.
I didn't know you worked on Panda. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was. I worked on a lot of sequels. I always tell people when I was at DreamWorks, and I remember the Peacock character initially was. For some reason they made him a little timid, a little bit weak. I think they wanted to make him weak to sort of show the contrast, because the idea is he comes into this medieval China and introduces gunpowder, and all of a sudden, there's the idea of cannons and guns.
Yeah.
Like
it's like the end of Kung Fu, right?
Right. It's like this big threat, and the idea was that they would make him weak physically to sort of juxtaposition to the contrast between that and having to use a gun. But the problem was it just made him not very interesting in terms of his screen presence.
Yeah.
And that was one of the notes that I remember that Guillermo said. It was like, just make him fucking scary. And I thought that made a lot of sense. And I think that did strengthen at least what made the character way more interesting, at least.
Yeah, I think every time I've always heard like a really interesting insight into, especially like dealing with like just little things like rules of how magic works. He clearly has experience in that world, be it, like Hellboy, all the Lovecraft stuff, the Mountains of Madness movie that I hope he gets to make someday.
Yeah.
Like he's thought about it a lot, and he's been like, he's the most genuine. God, it sounds like I'm blowing so much smoke up his ass. He'll never see this. He doesn't have time to watch this.
He's a busy guy.
But he's the most like genuine nerd dude who's just actually working on this that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like he's super excited to get to work on fantasy stuff. This isn't just like I guess I'm doing one more monster show.
Right. That's my favorite situation, I think, in Hollywood, because it's a rare thing when a guy like Spielberg or a guy like Guillermo end up in a position where they have that much clout, because you want the nerd, you want the geek, you want the guy who loves animation to sort of be in that position to sort of facilitate things, because that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, my favorite anecdote that I've heard, I think I can probably say this, but it's like he has Bleak House, this like famous. His you can see videos on it. It became a LACMA exhibit, but he has Bleak House is a house that he doesn't live in, but it's just filled with all of his like knickknacks, his H.P. Lovecraft statues and the original Samael sculpt from Hellboy, like crazy. It's an amazing dream house. Still haven't gotten to go. Guillermo, you really should invite me. But like, he has all these cool stuff in there, and I know he has a whole animation kind of studio in there, like a development room.
Okay.
And I've had a few people who worked for him who are like, yeah, we'll come in and we'll do viz dev for a movie or whatever it is. And he always has them work on traditional 2D like paper and sketching, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, is that just like he's a traditionalist? And they're like, no, I think because he just wants to keep all of it. Like, I think he's just like, he's that into it that he wants to keep all the dragon sketches and like have all that art and frame it and just be a huge fan of it.
I think it's interesting that a lot of artists are attracted to sort of that tactile quality when it comes to artwork. That's something that a lot of my friends like sell prints, and that actually, to me, to be honest, it was a little bit surprising to me that there's still a market for that. Because I know that people will go to Comic-Con and they'll spend exorbitant amounts of money just buying stuff because they can hold it and they can feel
totally,
it.
yeah.
And I feel like that's sort of a geek trait, right? Where it's like I have something special and it's real. It's not just a JPEG in a folder I have on my desktop.
I'm still like, even for comic books, I've still yet to come around to like the digital version of having it. Just feels so much better to have. And even going off that, like, it's so great to see, like, when Guillermo weighs in on visuals, he gets involved. Like, we have these amazing, talented artists and designers, and they'll put a dragon in front of him, and he starts, like, sketching right on the print of it. Like, we totally need to make the wings go this way for it. Like, and it's right every time.
Oh, I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but was there a specific moment growing up for you when you thought, oh, this is an actual job. That people come up with these ideas and help sort of be like, the creative force behind stuff.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I knew it was a job, and I was always writing, like, I would write humor columns for my high school paper, and I went to college at Indiana University, and I was like, I'll write an opinion column, and then while everyone's writing about politics, I'm just writing about, like, jokes about the population crisis or whatever.
Okay.
And I'm like, I was just doing it as humor, and I just, like, I loved doing it. But even then in college, I went to college assuming the best I could do, coming from Indiana, doesn't really ever encourage you to, like, ever come out here. Like, love my college. They had a great program. They kind of give you the realistic version of, like, the best you would even be able to do is, like, work for WGN in Chicago, or maybe, like, you could work for the Big Ten Network and do camera. That's, like, the more realistic thing. Because it's really hard to go from the Midwest to New York or LA or any of the big studio ones.
Right.
So they give you a lot more practical stuff. But even then, I think my number one goal freshman year was, well, I'll go to the business school, I'll get an entrepreneurship degree, and I'll just open up a record store and comic book store, and I'll just be the guy from Empire Records that just sells the media that I love.
Right.
And I just got lucky enough that I took one very basic, like, script writing course in our media school, and yeah, it just suddenly clicked, like, oh, I guess I could write. Like, I could actually, the thing I always wanted to write and do, I could make the movies instead as opposed to just selling them. And I don't know why that eureka moment took until I was 19 or 20 to figure that out.
Was it an instructor that kind of gave you a thumbs up, or was it like it got the right reaction out of somebody reading your stuff, or like? I
think a little bit. I mean, I had some really great teachers, including, like, names that probably, again, they'll never see us, like Ron Osgood and Lee Sheldon, who was, like, a professor we had written, like, Star Trek episodes, and just letting them, like, read my scripts and actually giving weigh in, and totally scathing. They completely blew up tons of story stuff I wanted to do. But I think just giving me comparisons of seeing, like, here's what a script looks like, and me kind of going, this sounds so cocky, but me seeing, like, scripts and going, like, yeah, I can do that. Like, that's not
sure.
The most empowering thing I think I honestly have ever seen, and again, I know this makes me sound like an asshole, I'm so sorry, was even as I interned, I got lucky enough to intern out here between my junior and senior year at both Cartoon Network in development, and I got a random internship job at a company called Blind Light that does voice recording and writing for video games, like Fallout and Halo and Command & Conquer, and getting to see the scripts that were being made, and getting to see the scripts that were, like, I'd read for development. If you're a reader, you just see this giant stack of potential writers they want to maybe hire, and seeing what level of script quality gets in front of these people to maybe be hired.
Yeah.
And I'm like, some of these are, like, really bad, like, not great.
Right.
That sounds so shitty. I know. Like, I'm just reading, like, this is a really bad Always Sunny spec. Like, Charlie sounds like Dennis, and Dennis sounds like Mac, and, like, I know that's wrong, and I'm 20.
Right.
And that, in the weird way, was the most inspiring. Like, well, I can do that. I can at least get on the table. I can at least, like, write a script where I get maybe seen and hired.
Considered.
Yeah, I know that's not the most inspiring. Like, I just want to follow my dream, as opposed to, I read some bad stuff and thought I could do better than that. But
well, that's a lot of. I mean, that's a lot of people out here. I think that's you're maybe just being more open about that, because I think a lot of artists see what's being put out there. I speak for myself when I'll go to, like, an indie film festival, and sometimes I'm literally passing out because of how bad they are, and I think I should try giving that a crack, because I feel that, like, if this is getting allowed, then for sure I can at least be, like you said, at least be put on the table, because you have that sort of you've done enough in your own practice that you're confident and know that you can at least hit a better place, right?
I want to fix it. Like that kind of.
Exactly, yeah. It's like you're like, why did you go that way? It's so obvious to just tweak this one thing and all of a sudden it works. It's way better.
Yeah, in a weird way that one of the most, this is after I came out here, but one of the most inspiring things I've been having is I usually go, it's like my church for me is to go to the New Beverly Cinema downtown in here in Hollywood. It's the one that's owned by Quentin Tarantino.
Okay, yeah.
It's this great grindhouse theater. It's been shut down all this year, I think, because they're using it to shoot Tarantino's new movie.
Okay.
I think. It's been closed for reconstruction for a whole year. But man, like every week I would go, and for $7, they'll do a double feature. Going with my good old buddy, shout out to Dom Moschiti.
$7, that's a steal out here.
Yeah, who does like Rates Paperback Paradise, that Twitter account. Like he and I will go and just get some hot dogs and watch some really weird 80s movies. Like, either the original Chainsaw Massacre, or here's a movie about a killer croc, and it's actually a crocodile just shot on miniature sets walking around. And there's something about that so inspiring where you're like seeing people try stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't work, it gets like your cogs turning, and the next day you come into work like, there's some ideas there I want to apply.
Totally.
Like there's something there I want to. There's some joy that people tried to make something.
Totally.
And I want to take that same energy and make it myself.
I remember talking to the story team when I was a young buck back at DreamWorks, telling them they were having coffee or something, because it felt like every department had their little cliques or whatever. And I was like the young gregarious guy who was just like, "Hey guys, what's up? Is anybody sitting here?" And I remember asking them like, "So do you guys, in terms of staying fresh, do you ever go out of your way and watch, kind of off the beaten path films and stuff?" And so they all kind of cocked their heads and were like, "What are you talking about?" Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's nice. So that's awesome that is something that is that's being applied, I guess, because that has to. Otherwise, I always feel like if I was in a writing position or even a boarding position, even with cinematography, like I don't want to go stale or just repeat what's been done a million times over. Like throw a monkey wrench in there, right?
Yeah. At the very least, it kind of teaches you. You'll see something that's bad, and you're like, okay, I know what not to do now, or I know that character motivation didn't work because they didn't set it up early enough.
Okay.
And I feel like little tiny things like that all builds up cumulatively to like just little lessons, and you should never have hard and fast rules about your writing. You should never like absolutely not. Right. Never introduce a character later than the first act, or be open to new ideas. Right. But I think you at least can, if you see what you like and what works for you, and then figuring out why it works for you.
Dude, I remember in college, somebody made the declaration that there's only like 7 types of stories. And
I know, I've heard that before, yeah.
So bothered by that, thinking like that seems so sad and so closed. I feel like, and granted, there may be like structures that work better than others, but I don't know. I don't know if you've heard or what your thoughts on that kind of like thinking.
I had a demoralizing summer when I read Save the Cat, which is the book that every writer is always told to read.
I started reading that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, Sid Field's book. There's like 3 or 4 books everyone recommends, and one of them is always Save the Cat. And if you haven't read it, it's like, you read part of it. It's just like how to make a by the numbers blockbuster movie.
Right.
It's really, but it's like to level of your moment of all darkness should be like on page 84 or whatever. Right. And I think when you're really, especially starting out to be creative, it feels so demoralizing, and it makes this thing that you're really passionate about feel very paint by numbers.
Yeah.
And no offense to the guy, the fact that this dude had only written Blank Check was and he's using Blank Check as records. You're like, Blank Check's not that great. It's fine.
Sure.
It's okay. It's not the most astounding. It's not like he wrote, Inception or something.
Right.
But he's using that for his reference points, and it can be a little demoralizing to see, like, I guess every movie is that, but it's almost like you need to walk before you can run thing, mm-hmm. where you're just reading that kind of thing and knowing, there is basic structures, and I don't know if you got to the point of why they call it Save the Cat, his rule was like, you should always have an opening scene where you root for your character.
Right.
And it's like in Al Pacino and I think Serpico, where he's busting guys, and I have this really, so sorry for your podcast. He's like, I'm just explaining the plot of Serpico.
No, it's fine.
Like, I think that's the movie where they are busting people who have warrants out by sending them letters saying that they've won tickets to a Yankees meet and greet. And the whole thing is like all these felons or ex-convicts are all coming in think they're going to meet big baseball players, and as they come inside, they're like, "Book 'em, Dano." get him out of here. And you're like, man, Al Pacino, he's so clever to come up with this idea.
Right.
And then as he's leading them in, he talks to a dad who like is on the list, but he brought his little boy with him because he really loves the Yankees. And he's like, hey, you know what? You guys get out of here. You're fine. You're like, yeah, that's a save the cat moment because you like Al Pacino more.
Right.
And I see how that works. Like, I get why that actually totally endears you.
Right.
And you'll see that in everything then.
Who's to say, though, that, like, I feel like the main character doesn't necessarily always have to be likable as long as they're interesting, right? Because there's always the idea of the anti-hero being like, you know, this guy is a bastard. He's nothing to aspire to be, but I can't stop watching. You know, I mean, almost like Goodfellas. All three guys in that film, they're not exactly, you know, I guess they're likable in a charming way. But yeah, I think I kind of repel the idea of like this is how you're supposed to do it, and
yeah, I think the skill out of it is to learn. It's almost like learning martial arts or something. Like you learn the basics, right?
Right. The rules.
You learn the wax on, wax off, or whatever. You get why the rules work. You see the merit of them for sure. And I've totally had scripts where like we do need a save the cat type moment in the beginning, so you care about this character,
right?
Or at least something where you get what they want. But then you can play with like when you know it works. Maybe we can try pushing it off an episode or whatever it is, or play this character a little bit more vague or mystery. And like, but you need to kind of know the foundation before you start going crazy. And I think a lot of writers, which rightfully so, I get that repulsion, want to just skip those steps.
Right.
And then they have a script that doesn't completely work and they don't know why.
Right, I gotcha. Yeah. Also, I think too, knowing the fundamentals, so to speak, also allows you to find ways to subvert expectations, right? Where it's like, you're setting, because I see that every now and then in a really successful story where you're leading the audience down a certain path because they've been here before. This is very familiar territory, but then that's when you kind of go all of a sudden take a hard right or hard left, and it's like, oh wow, that again, and that's kind of what really all I want for me anyways at this point is like I want to be surprised and taken someplace I didn't expect.
Totally, yeah.
So I guess it does in that with that idea, it is good to know sort of the rules, so to speak.
Yeah, my favorite scripts from like pilots I ever read are, this is following the foundation of a good story pretty well, and then they'll throw like one turn in there that subverts what would be traditional good storytelling because it works well for a character revelation. Or the bad version of it. This feels very esoteric to talk about, but like I feel like I've seen scripts and stories where like you could tell the writer was so aware of subverting expectations.
Oh right.
That they subverted it 10 times.
Right.
And then there's a certain Star Wars movie that I feel like almost suffered from that. Like it's cool, I get it. And then, but the point where it's just constant kind of twists and turns, you're like, I don't even know what the character arc is anymore.
Yeah.
Because it was so enamored with
it's true.
The twist and turn.
You feel it's like it feels trollish at that point.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, this is a little self-satisfying to whoever came up with the idea versus having a little bit more brevity, I guess, with that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's also, I think I kind of struggle with too, is when you're writing, it's so easy to get, you're thinking about this story all day. Like if you're obsessive like me, you're writing it and then you go home and you're still kind of thinking about it, and which is not good. But you'll be working on it for a whole week and you're so sure that this one line you have in the script is crucial and it sets up everything.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have like someone who's not familiar with the story, like read that and point out like, I didn't know that's what you were going for. That line totally doesn't do what you think it does. You can go down this road of like doing the turns or thinking you're setting stuff up, but you almost kind of always need like someone to keep you neutral or keep you like, give you a basis.
Yeah.
Or you get too caught in your head, like I gotta add another twist. This is too obvious. They'll see it coming because you've been thinking about it for 2 months.
Right.
And you forget that someone who hasn't read this won't even think about that at all.
Dude, it's the same mental gymnastics with comedy because I used to do a lot of short comedy things on YouTube and the internet, and I do this trick with myself where when I come up with the idea with be it whoever is in the room with me, and we're on the ground laughing because we think it's so funny, and then 5 weeks later I'm doing the coloring and the shading and I'm just so over it because I've seen it 100 times. It just does nothing for me. And I told myself, like, there was a version of me that existed. There was a state of Rodrigo that existed in the past. I thought this was the greatest thing ever, and I have to hold on to that, knowing that once that gets thrown out into the public, hopefully enough people agreed with that version of me. And then more often than not, that's usually what happens. So, but yeah, it's really mentally taxing to sort of, get out of yourself and have a bird's eye view and be like, it's going to be okay. I just have to trust that initial spark, right?
Yeah, that's a totally tough skill to, like, especially with jokes, to believe in the joke when it's your third week on your third draft on that script, and everyone's laughing at the joke because you've heard it a million times, but to remember, like, that's a solid joke,
right?
But at the same time, to be able to be like, it's just not working. Like, to be able to throw away your darlings, or like, it's our third draft. That beat's just not working. I know we all really liked it originally. I think we need to.
Yeah.
It's a tough skill. I'm still figuring it out myself. Like, when to throw stuff out and when to stay the course.
Yeah.
And believe in the original idea, kind of thing.
It's tricky too, because I think in a group situation, and this has happened to me, where for some reason everybody's in a certain mood, and if for whatever reason that day everything is a yes, 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 right? Mm-hmm. And but then you have to look at, I guess, in your case, maybe in the context of the rest of the episode, is that something that is complementing everything else, right? And
you got to kind of look at a broader picture all the time of, you're looking at this episode, you're looking at just this scene, but then how does it affect the rest of the season?
Right.
Does this line here totally blow up something later?
Right.
And being flexible about it, I think the best stuff is every episode we've ever had where we totally planned to do something in episode 10. By the time we got there, we realized it just didn't work, but we inadvertently set something up in episode 3 that we can totally use that makes us look like geniuses. We totally didn't mean to do that. We totally didn't mean to bring that character back from the dead, or that line there meant something completely different, but now we can use it.
Right.
And I guess it's kind of like being not smart enough. That's very cocky. But like being able to acknowledge that and like see where you can go back and use something. And
it's sort of connecting the dots that you didn't realize you created, right? Where, I hear that a lot from screenwriters, where at least the ones that, to be quite frank, the ones that I look up to, whenever they're put on the spot and be like, dude, it was so genius that you had this moment here and you set this character up here, and then at the end it paid off in this way I didn't even see coming. How did you construct that to begin with? And very often it's refreshing, because it makes it seem attainable as somebody who's trying to be creative. And they kind of just shrug and go, I wasn't planning that at all. But I think the skill that you're talking about is sort of recognizing, oh, this hose connects amazing.
There's something
here.
there we can use for sure.
Right. And I think that is more what's valuable in terms of I guess, good writing is
the media's depiction of what writing is so, like, it threw me for years that every movie and every TV show version is just the guy just sitting on the typewriter and just
with a
exterior diner.
MacBook Pro with a turtleneck.
And you just write through the entire thing in one go, and it's brilliant.
Right.
That is not the process at all.
Right.
Like, I constantly am hating everything I'm writing, and then after I'm done, I'm like, that wasn't that bad, I guess. That was okay.
Do you find that like taking a good break from whatever you had and then coming back with fresh eyes?
Yeah, I have definitely, it sounds like it's being lazy too, but I've definitely prescribed to, when you're actually writing, this isn't like talking about breaking story or whatever, but you have like 5 to 10 good pages in you per day, tops.
Okay.
I heard this from multiple writers. I've had days where I've done 20 and I feel really good about it, and it helps when you have a deadline.
Sure.
But I think at a certain point, you creatively just are either burning out, or you're just trying to get the pages done. But your best stuff, you start to creatively run out of gas, and your mileage may vary for everyone. But give yourself enough time to spread that stuff out.
Great.
As opposed to, like, if you're trying to write a screenplay, don't try to write 90 pages in 3 days. Right. Write 5 every day. Just know it's going to take you a while.
I remember I had one of the writers back at Fox ADHD. He had this, and everybody likes to sort of come up with these almost like urban legends and stories. But apparently there was a guy who only worked when he had an entire day to get everything done, and he would just, the whole night just have this manic, crazy episode, and like all of a sudden Shakespeare would come out, and I always kind of was a little suspect of that, but yeah, I think people like to come up with stories on their own.
It's so against every skill I learned in college of procrastinating until the last day.
Yes.
Including the worst script I've ever written was I took a screenplay course. I loved the teacher; she was great, but I think her curriculum was spread out where the whole semester was supposed to be you just writing a screenplay. Mm-hmm. That was your final. Was you'll write a screenplay. This whole class is teaching you to do the steps, and the only due assignment the entire semester was 1 month in, you needed to have written the first 10 pages.
Wow. Okay.
But no outline, no like basic structure stuff, as far as I remember. So yeah, first month in, everyone writes 10 pages of a script, and then none of us did the work for the next 2 months. We go to class,
Sure.
but no one's working on the script.
Sure.
And there was this kind of miraculous moment where it was the finals week. We all realized our 90-page screenplay was due, and everyone in the class kind of secretly to themselves like, have you written it? No. And about 25 of us went to the main IU library and pulled all-nighters, all sitting next to each other, just writing stream of consciousness screenplay.
Wow.
And quickly, all of the ideas I had in my head for this super hacky zombie movie, I was so clear that was such a cool idea. This was like 8 years ago. And I'm like, this doesn't work. Like, this just doesn't, oh crap. Like, these character motivations totally don't make sense. And if I had written this, I would have seen this, but it's 3 a.m. and it's due in 4 hours.
Sure.
I don't know if I should brag about this. I feel very ashamed. So everyone writes in their screenplays. Everyone's like, this is garbage. I can't believe I wrote this. I get to like the third act and it's just not working. Like all my I've run out of all my fun ideas that I totally had. I don't have a good conclusive ending.
Yeah.
And this is the most impressive bullshit I've ever pulled off was I wrote the script and then the next page was me just going, respectfully, Professor, I've gotten to this point where I don't think the third act works. I honestly was throwing myself at the mercy of the court. I can't find out where this story goes. I did not say that I was writing it all in one night.
Sure.
But I just I don't know where to go with this. I think to write a bad third act would hurt the story more.
Wow.
So here is the first 60-ish pages. And the teacher was like, I really respected your honesty.
Wow.
B-. And I was like, I thought for sure I was going to fail the course.
Holy shit, dude. I also wonder if it's also her being like, oh, however many pages less I have to read because I have a giant pile
probably
of
actually is like you had to read
to
30 screenplays in a week. Sounds nuts. But yeah, writing all at once is like it's such a bad idea, at least for me.
I took an English class where we had to write a 50-page novella, which was incredibly intimidating for me. And I remember, but at least we did, I think, do it in the right order where we had the outline and we're sort of giving the teacher installments as we went along. So again, I probably would have waited last minute like you did, but the teacher was sort of holding her hand and being like, okay, let's get this much done. Let's get this much done. And I remember it was really a fun experience because I was sort of treating the teacher like I wanted the first time reader to experience the story I was trying to come up with. And so she actually hated everything I was doing because I was purposefully omitting certain information because I didn't want to give away the ending. I didn't want to give away where the story was going. So she would have marks on my outlines being like, because I'd be like, and I'd put some really vague description about the way it wrapped up, and she would in all red like, what does this even mean? Where are you going with this and that? And I don't know, for whatever reason I didn't care that I was getting like C's all the way through, but then at the end I get the A- because she's like, wow,
it paid off.
This actually did something. And I was like, yes, like it actually worked out. So yeah, but I was just.
I mean, that's actually a skill, and I totally believe in having a really good outline. Like it's the hardest part of the whole process.
Yeah.
Because you actually are, if you're a really good outline, you're figuring every single beat that's mostly going to happen. You're not writing every line, but like where the character movements go, and you know what big turns you want to have happen. At that point, if you have a really good outline, the writing's the easiest part.
Right.
You're really just transcribing, adding fun dialogue, and you'll discover little moments. But that outline is so crucial to have.
It's kind of going back to what we're talking about, where it feels we don't like the idea that there's always like there's like 8 different types of stories. I think kind of what you're talking about right now, where once you have the outline, once you know where you're going, once you have the structure, it's sort of the roadmap. Kind of I guess what's left in terms of originality and freshness, it's the how you do it, and that's So even if you succumb to the idea that there's only 5 types of stories, the one thing that can never be taken away, I think, as a creative person, it's like, well, no one's going to do it the way you might do it, and that's sort of the devil's in the details kind of thing.
Totally.
Right?
Every story has basically been told. Right. You can always compare some movie to something else.
Right.
What's your personal take on it? What's your twist? What's your
How is the character going to deliver the lines, even with something as basic as that? So, well, Chad, we're going to move on to the Q&A session for this talk.
I'm sure you got so many because I'm such a big deal.
Well, I always say we're a very small but fervent group right now. So we have a question, and this is from the Shot Talk Discord group, by the way. So if you are a patron, you can direct questions to our guests. So we have one from a guy named Simon Bede, and he asks, how do you accept compliments for your work? I know it's a toughie. It's a toughie.
Terribly. I am so like self-deprecating. It's actually really hard to take compliments. Without feeling like I'm jerking myself off. I usually tell them thank you. That means a lot. I always pass all credit to everyone else.
Sure.
Because I do think it's a whole team collaborative thing.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to feel a little bit of like, I guess I should toot my own horn every once in a while if it's important to.
Yeah.
There's a version for sure. I think the very political one is always like acknowledge everyone that helped you get there. And even in terms of writing, like there's a writer. It's a collaborative effort. There's 5 to 6 people in that room. Everyone's names are on there or should be on there.
Right. It's a pretty small town, so you want to make sure that you're paying forward all the help that you've gotten.
Dude,
right?
there's one thing. Sorry, your dog is just being real cute.
He's just, he's like, you guys aren't busy right now.
Yeah, this is not a good question at all. If one thing I learned is this industry is so goddamn small that it is it's never worth being toxic or anything to anyone. Like, even if they deserved it, like there's like only a couple hundred people I feel like they're working cartoons. It's better to be positive and like share the love and
and it's especially nice when you can be real, like sincere about it, right? Where it's like somebody did actually do a great job as a writing partner, as a whatever, and you get to like, oh, here's my chance to be like, hey man, this guy deserves some props and everything. So
because you're gonna probably work with some of those people again, even 10 years later.
I always tell the story about there was a PA at Fox ADHD, and you know, he got certain types of treatment from certain people, but I always thought like, yeah, you know, he's a pretty affable, friendly person who, you know, I'm gonna treat him like anybody else. And fast forward to today, he's now a development executive at Amazon Studios. Oh, nice. So you just never know what's gonna happen.
Off,
so just being a decent person.
Same, by the way, like not to pay off, like the people I see like fans and aspiring artists and stuff on Twitter who are just like, I'm gonna rag on everything, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, you're these creators and writers and directors, they see this stuff, and they can find that. And if you decided to rag on Boss Baby, and you want to work at DreamWorks in 10 years, they might remember that, like they might or find that for it.
Pull up that tweet.
It's not worth it, man.
Yeah. No, no, that's good advice. Yes, I'll say that. This is not really a question. So
just a statement. Not a big fan of Trollhunters. Do something else.
Spastic Chihuahua says, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. He's answering the guy's question. What the fuck? We're gonna skip
Does
that.
he disagree with my advice?
He says, I just say something like, oh, thanks, lol.
Valid answer.
So, you know, the viewers can decide what they want to do.
Which one's better?
Based on those two responses. Yeah, another question we have that is, off the Discord, right? Somebody wanted to know, specifically with Trollhunters, it seems that you guys are very aware of setting things up and then having that pay off with consequences later on. And that it was more of a comment on like, oh, I noticed that they're keeping that in mind. Like, does that... So it's obviously very intentional, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
right?
and some of that comes from we plot as much of it as forward as we can. Trollhunters had the benefit of knowing we were going to do that many episodes from the beginning. It's a huge blessing as opposed to most traditional shows where you only get like one season and you hope you get renewed. To be able to have that much, you can plot all the way through. You can plot like, we know Jim's going to get back from the Darklands at this point of the season, and we can write towards that. And we can build character growth around these big, giant set pieces. Yeah. And plan that far ahead is a huge blessing to have that many episodes ahead of time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then kind of also like what we said before of sometimes you'll discover stuff in like the 40th episode that you didn't realize you were setting up in episode 20.
Right.
And connecting that dot and it makes you feel like a genius.
Happy accident.
Happy accident for sure.
Yeah. Dude, that's across the board, I think, with creative stuff. Yeah, for sure. I mean, as an animator, a lot of CG guys talk about like, the keyframe just happened to be... the arm was just rotated in a way that was perfect, and I didn't have to figure that out. So
I think it kind of speaks a little bit to like if your characters are really sound and your themes are really sound, like that parallelism will just kind of come up naturally. Mm-hmm. You'll have people who are like, the way Jim was eating that dinner, is such a metaphor for his zeal for life.
Right. They start reading. Right.
And you're like, no, we didn't mean that at all. But like,
But
yeah, it kind of paid off. Yeah.
You're really paying attention, which is nice. That's like the best compliment, right? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. That people are paying attention to the details. That for me is something that as a viewer, I mean, that's everybody's favorite movie, right? Where you're giving it 100% your focus and it pays off because everything, at least the important stuff, was intentional. And then, like that, there's that extra geek level where it's like, obviously this had some sort of significant meaning. And these guys were geniuses. Everything they did.
Sometimes it's like, we totally reused a prop because it's cheaper.
Right.
But because we used that prop from another episode, you guys think we're foreshadowing something. And then we totally did not mean to. Just...
You're talking about like a physical 3D prop.
Yeah, like a physical 3D prop. Like, that's just us just because we already had a similar thing like that. Right. And why would we make a new one? Yes, also we're connecting the dots.
Sure. These are the people that just 50th time through they're taking notes.
These are the Wikipedia entry type of the trivia things. Yeah.
Right. Do you get how much of that do you guys pay attention to? Because that's got to be a whole world, right?
Everyone's mileage varies. I try to sparingly do it. Like, I don't ever want to get into, all the people who like want to just hate on your stuff online. I don't think that's positive, but I'll totally like every once in a while go through like a hashtag on Twitter or Tumblr. Yeah. Totally respond to really loving fan art if someone does cosplay. Yeah. I generally try to avoid kind of like just people asking, these are great questions, but there's everyone on Twitter just like, hey, is Droll ever coming back? And like, I just can't respond back to you because if I do, that'll maybe open the floodgates to 50 more questions. Right, I get what you mean. Yeah, kind of picking your battles on giving a mouse a cookie and all of a sudden, overwhelmed. Yeah, a little more sparingly and trying to acknowledge the bigger stuff, or like if someone makes a Trollhunter amulet replica, of course I'll retweet that and add on to it, that sort of thing. Totally, that's cool, man. Well, Chad, thanks for being on the show. Of course, man. Sorry we're talking about boring writing stuff. No, man. Listen, this is the geeky meat that I want to get into on the regular. So thanks for sharing, man. Thanks for having me. I think we touched some really cool stuff today. So something I'm definitely going to chew on for sure afterwards. So likewise. Thanks. Yeah, man, for sure. All right. Well, we will see you guys next week on the next episode of Shot Talk. If you like this episode of Shot Talk and would like to see more episodes in the future, join the Shot Talk Patreon at patreon.com/Shot Talk. You'll get access to private Discord servers, Q&A opportunities for the guests, and more. Also, if you're enjoying these beats, you can follow me at jetsy.bandcamp.com. Thanks, and see you next time.